I was sprawled on our ratty couch in the living room of our half-renovated colonial, nursing a beer and pretending to watch some mindless cop show. Vanessa had been in the shower for 20 minutes, long enough to wash a small army, but she always claimed she needed me time after her stressful job as a legal secretary. Right. Filing papers and flirting with lawyers must be absolutely exhausting. The ping came from her MacBook, sitting open on the kitchen counter where she'd left it. She never left it open. Ever. Vanessa guarded that thing like it contained state secrets. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. My name's Colin Baxter, and I'm a real estate appraiser in this godforsaken corner of Maine where everyone knows everyone else's business. Except, apparently, I didn't know my own wife's. At 36, I thought I'd figured out most of life's cruel jokes. Turns out, I was the punchline to one I hadn't heard yet. The shower was still running upstairs, steam probably fogging up the bathroom mirror she spent an hour staring into every morning, practicing her "I'm just a sweet small-town girl" smile. That smile had fooled me for 3 years of marriage. Maybe it was time to see what was behind it. I walked over to the laptop, beer in hand, telling myself I was just going to close it, being a good husband, saving battery life. But the screen was bright, showing her desktop, and there was a file I'd never seen before sitting right in the middle. Our future plan docs. Our future plan? Since when did Vanessa make plans that included me? She couldn't even plan what to have for dinner without changing her mind 6 times. My finger hovered over the trackpad. The shower was still running. Just a quick look. I clicked. The document opened, and my blood turned to ice water. Phase 1. Fake pregnancy scare. Get him emotionally invested and talking about our family. Make him think about the future, kids, bigger house, etc. Timeline, 2 to 3 weeks. Phase 2. Move story to miscarriage. Get sympathy. Make him feel protective. Use this to suggest I move in permanently for emotional support. Timeline, 1 week after Phase 1. Phase 3. Once living together full-time, establish financial dependence. Get access to his accounts, learn his assets, property values, etc. He's an appraiser, so he knows everyone's property values. Use this. Timeline, 2 to 3 months. Phase 4. Create irreconcilable differences. Start fights. Make him look controlling, abusive to friends. Document everything. Timeline, 1 to 2 months. Phase 5, file for divorce. With established residence and financial dependence, plus emotional abuse narrative, should get at least 50% of assets plus alimony. His house alone is worth $280K. Timeline, ASAP after Phase 4. Notes, Shayla says her cousin went through this exact process in Portland. Lawyer fees were $15K, but she got $340K total settlement. Colin's too naive to fight dirty. He'll probably just give me what I want to keep things civil. Remember, keep playing the sweet, innocent wife role. He eats that shit up. I read it twice. Then a third time. Each word hit like a physical blow, and by the end, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the beer bottle. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of me working 60-hour weeks to pay for this house, this life, her shopping trips and girls' nights out. 3 years of me thinking I'd finally found someone who loved me for who I was, a blue-collar guy from a blue-collar family who got lucky enough to land a decent job and buy a house in a town that was slowly gentrifying around us. The shower shut off upstairs. I grabbed my phone and quickly forwarded the document to my email, then to my lawyer, Pete Morrison. Pete was a good guy who'd handled the house purchase and would probably handle my divorce too, apparently. The irony wasn't lost on me. By the time Vanessa came downstairs in her fluffy pink robe, hair wrapped in a towel, I was back on the couch with my beer, laptop closed, watching TV like nothing had happened. "Hey, baby," she said, that sweet smile lighting up her face. The same smile that had convinced me to propose 6 months ago. Good episode? I looked at her. Really looked at her. Vanessa Pierce, soon to be Vanessa Baxter if everything went according to her plan. 28 years old, blonde hair that came from a bottle, green eyes that I used to think were warm but now realized were calculating. She was pretty in that generic way that photographed well on social media. Not beautiful, but pretty enough to make a guy like me feel lucky. Oh, I said, taking a sip of beer. Just watching people lie to each other and pretend everything's fine. Fascinating stuff. She tilted her head, and for a split second, I saw something flicker across her face. Suspicion? Fear? But then the sweet smile was back. You're so funny, Colin. I'm exhausted. Long day at the office. I'll bet, I said. All that planning must be tiring work. Another flicker. This time I was sure. Planning? Planning the office Christmas party, planning vacation days, planning futures. I kept my voice level, casual. That sort of thing. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could practically see the wheels turning in her head. But she was committed to the role now. Well, I am always thinking about our future, she said, moving to sit next to me on the couch. She curled up against my side like a cat, a very expensive, very dangerous cat. I love you, Colin. I love the life we're building together. The life you're planning to steal, I thought. But out loud I just said, love you too, sweetheart. She kissed my cheek and headed upstairs to bed. I stayed on the couch, staring at the TV without seeing it, my mind racing. Vanessa Pierce thought she was going to play me for a fool. She thought I was too nice, too naive to fight dirty. She thought she could waltz into my life, take everything I'd worked for, and skip off into the sunset with a nice fat settlement. She was wrong about a lot of things, but she was especially wrong about me being too nice to fight dirty. I finished my beer and started planning. The next morning, Vanessa made coffee and toast like she was auditioning for a 1950s housewife commercial. She hummed while she worked, occasionally glancing at me with those practiced smiles. "Sleep well, honey?" she asked, sliding a cup of coffee across the kitchen counter to me. "Like a baby," I lied. I'd been up until 3 a.m., going through every detail of our relationship with new eyes, every sweet gesture, every loving word, every time she'd encouraged me to tell her everything about my work, my finances, my life. It all made sense now. She poured her own coffee and sat across from me at our small kitchen table. The morning light streaming through the window made her look almost angelic. Almost. "I was thinking," she said, stirring sugar into her mug, "maybe we should start talking about the future more seriously. Making some real plans." The audacity was breathtaking. She was actually going to start phase 1 right now, sitting here drinking coffee I'd paid for in a house I'd bought. "What kind of plans?" I asked. "Well," she bit her lower lip in that way that used to make my heart race. Now it just made my stomach turn. "I've been thinking about us, about family, about what we want our life to look like in 5 years." "Family?" I raised an eyebrow. "That's a big step." "I know, but Colin, I love you so much, and I keep thinking about what it would be like to have your babies, to raise them in this beautiful house." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I might be ready to start trying soon. Phase 1, right on schedule." I squeezed her hand and smiled. "That's amazing, Vanessa. I've been hoping you'd feel that way." Her smile was radiant, triumphant. She thought she had me. "Really? Oh, Colin, I'm so happy. We should probably start thinking about finances too, Making sure we're ready for a family. Maybe I should know more about our situation, help with the planning." And there it was, the hook, baited and cast. "Of course," I said. "We're partners in this. You should know everything." After she left for work, I called in sick and drove to Mick's garage on the outskirts of town. Mick Torino was my oldest friend. A guy who'd grown up 3 streets over from me and now ran a towing and auto repair business. He was also the kind of guy who asked very few questions and had a flexible relationship with rules and regulations. Colin. Mick looked up from under the hood of a beat-up Chevy, wiping his hands on a greasy rag. What brings you to my palace of automotive excellence? I need a favor, Mick. A big one. He studied my face, and his expression grew serious. What's going on? I told him everything. The document, the plan, Vanessa's performance that morning. Mick listened without interrupting, his jaw getting tighter with each detail. That cold-hearted bitch, he said when I finished. What do you need? Information. I need to know everything about her real life. Where she goes, who she talks to, what she's really doing during those girls' nights out. Mick nodded slowly. I know a guy who does that kind of work. Private investigator, very discreet. But Colin, that's going to cost you. I don't care what it costs. I need to know what I'm really dealing with. Give me until tomorrow. I'll make some calls. From Mick's garage, I drove to the Timberline, the local bar where half the town conducted its unofficial business. Marie Kowalski had owned the place for 15 years and knew everyone's secrets. She was also the kind of woman who appreciated a good revenge story. Colin Baxter, she said as I walked in. Little early for you, isn't it? Just need some information, Marie, and maybe some advice. I ordered a beer and told her a carefully edited version of my situation. Marie listened while she wiped down glasses, her expression growing more interested by the minute. So your wife's been playing house while planning to take you to the cleaners, she said. And you want to know what she's really been up to. Something like that. Marie leaned across the bar. Honey, I've been watching people lie to each other for 15 years. Your wife's been in here exactly 3 times in the past month, each time with a different man. My beer suddenly tasted like sawdust. Different men? First time was with that slimy mortgage broker Elliot Branson, you know him? Thinks he's God's gift to women, drives that flashy BMW, always talking about his deals and his connections. I knew Elliot. He'd tried to get me to steer clients his way in exchange for kickbacks. I'd told him to go to hell. Second time was with some guy I didn't recognize. Older, expensive suit, looked like money. Third time, Marie paused dramatically. Third time was with Elliot again. They were all over each other in the back booth, real cozy. The pieces were falling into place. Vanessa wasn't just planning to scam me. She was already lining up her next mark. Marie, if I needed people to know certain information about certain people, how would that happen? She grinned. Honey, you're looking at the town's unofficial communications director. What did you have in mind? I spent the next hour laying groundwork. Marie was more than happy to help. She'd never liked Vanessa, said there was something fake about her. Turned out Marie's instincts were better than mine. That evening, I was waiting when Vanessa got home from work. She looked flustered, checking her phone constantly. Everything okay? I asked. Oh yes, just work stuff. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was, actually, because legal secretaries in our small town didn't usually have work emergencies that required constant phone checking. But I nodded sympathetically. I've been thinking about what you said this morning, I told her. About family, about planning our future. Her face lit up. Really? Really. In fact, I think we should celebrate. Why don't you call Shayla and see if she wants to go out tonight? Girls' night. You two can talk about wedding planning, baby planning, all that fun stuff. Vanessa's expression flickered, just for a second. But then the smile was back. That's so sweet, Colin. But I'd rather stay in with you. Nonsense. You've been working so hard. You deserve a fun night out. I practically pushed her out the door an hour later, after she'd changed into a dress that was definitely not meant for a casual evening with her female best friend. As soon as her car disappeared down the street, I got to work. First, I made copies of everything. Bank statements, property documents, insurance papers, anything that showed what I owned and what it was worth. Then I secured it all in a safety deposit box at a bank across town. Next, I went through Vanessa's things with the thoroughness of a professional appraiser. In her jewelry box, I found receipts for expensive items I'd never seen her wear. In her closet, I found clothes with tags still on them, clothes that cost more than I made in a week. In her purse, I found a second phone. The second phone was locked, but it was enough. Nobody carried two phones unless they were leading two lives. I was putting everything back exactly as I'd found it when I heard her car in the driveway. I quickly finished and settled onto the couch with a beer and the remote. "How was girls' night?" I asked when she came in. "Oh, you know. Just girl talk. Shayla's so excited about our plans." She kicked off her heels and sat next to me. We talked about weddings and babies and futures. It was wonderful. She smelled like cologne, expensive cologne that definitely wasn't mine. "I'm so glad you had fun," I said, putting my arm around her. "I love seeing you happy." She snuggled against me, and I felt her relax. She thought she was winning. She thought her plan was working perfectly. She had no idea that I was 3 moves ahead of her. Mick called the next morning while Vanessa was getting ready for work. "My guy came through," he said. "Your wife's been busy. Real busy." "How busy?" "Busy enough that you're going to want to see this in person. Can you meet me at the garage in an hour?" I told Vanessa I had property inspections all day and might be late getting home. She barely looked up from her phone as she nodded, already deep in whatever web of lies she was spinning. At Mick's garage, I met Tony Ricci, a thin, nervous-looking man who carried a briefcase like it contained nuclear secrets. "Mr. Baxter," Tony said, shaking my hand with sweaty palms, "I've got some information you need to see." He opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick folder of photographs. "Your wife's been conducting 3 separate relationships over the past 2 months," Tony said, spreading the photos across Mick's workbench. "The primary one appears to be with Elliot Branson. They meet twice a week, usually at his house or at various hotels outside of town." The photos were crystal clear. Vanessa and Elliot kissing in his BMW. Vanessa and Elliot entering a motel room. Vanessa and Elliot having dinner at an expensive restaurant 2 towns over. The secondary relationship is with a man named Richard Steinberg. He's a divorce attorney from Portland. Expensive one. More photos. Vanessa in deep conversation with a silver-haired man in an expensive suit. The same man Marie had seen her with at the Timberline. The third relationship appears to be purely transactional. She meets with a woman named Jennifer Walsh once a week. Walsh runs a service that provides false documentation for divorce proceedings, fake medical records, false witness statements, that sort of thing. My hands were shaking as I looked through the photos. The evidence was overwhelming, damning, and perfect. "There's more," Tony continued. "I traced her financial activity. She's been receiving payments from Elliot Branson for the past month. Small amounts, always in cash, but consistent. And she's been making payments to Walsh's service." "She's paying someone to help her frame me," I said. "That's what it looks like. There's also this." Tony handed me a small recording device. I managed to get audio of one of her conversations with Walsh. "It's all there, Mr. Baxter. The whole plan." I listened to my wife's voice, cold and calculating, discussing the best ways to make me look abusive and controlling. She laughed about how easy I was to manipulate. She joked about how I actually believed she loved me. When the recording ended, I sat in silence for a long moment. Mick and Tony waited, watching my face. "How much do I owe you?" I asked Tony. "Mick's taking care of it. But Mr. Baxter, you need to be careful. These people play for keeps, if they realize you're onto them." "Let me worry about that," I said. After Tony left, Mick and I sat in his office, drinking coffee and planning. "So what's the play?" Mick asked. "I'm going to give her exactly what she wants," I said. "I'm going to be the perfect mark, right up until the moment I destroy all of them." "All of them?" "Vanessa, Elliot, this Walsh woman, even that divorce lawyer. They want to play dirty? Fine. But they picked the wrong guy to screw with." That evening, I put on the performance of my life. When Vanessa got home, I was cooking dinner, flowers on the table, candles lit. "What's all this?" she asked, but she was smiling. She thought I was falling deeper into her trap. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about family, about our future. I want that, Vanessa. I want it all with you." Over dinner, I told her I'd been looking into our finances, figuring out how we could afford a bigger house when the babies came. I mentioned specific numbers, specific assets, specific plans. Her eyes lit up with each detail. "You're so wonderful, Colin," she said, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "I'm so lucky to have found you." "I'm the lucky one," I replied. "I never thought I'd find someone who loved me for who I really am." The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife, but she just smiled and nodded. After dinner, while she was in the bathroom, I checked her phone. 3 new messages from Elliot, 2 from someone listed as RS, who had to be the lawyer, and 1 from JW, Jennifer Walsh. The messages from Elliot were explicit and crude. The ones from RS were about moving forward with the timeline. The one from JW was about finalizing the documentation. They were accelerating their plan, which meant I needed to accelerate mine. I spent the next 3 days playing the perfect dupe. I shared financial information, talked about joint bank accounts, even mentioned updating my will to include her. Each conversation was recorded on a device Tony had given me, completely legal since it was in my own home. Meanwhile, I was building my own case. I documented every lie, every inconsistency in her stories. I tracked her movements, her spending, her communications. I built a file that would make any divorce lawyer weep with joy, but I wasn't planning to use it in divorce court. On Thursday evening, Vanessa announced she was going out with Shayla again. "Another girls' night?" I asked. "Just dinner and drinks. Girl talk, you know." "Of course. Have fun." But instead of staying home, I followed her. She drove straight to Elliot's house, a flashy new construction in the expensive part of town. I parked down the street and waited. An hour later, they came out together, got into his BMW, and drove to the Timberline. They took the back booth where Marie had seen them before, the one partially hidden from view. They thought they were being discreet. They weren't counting on Marie being my ally. I walked into the bar like I owned the place, nodded to Marie, and took a seat at the bar where I could see them, but they couldn't see me. Marie served me a beer and positioned herself where she could listen to their conversation. What I heard made my blood boil. "He's so pathetic," Vanessa was saying. "He actually thinks I love him. Today he was talking about updating his will to include me. Can you believe it?" Elliot laughed. "The poor bastard has no idea what's coming. Rich says we can file next month. He's got everything we need to make Colin look like a controlling, emotionally abusive husband. Jennifer's documentation is perfect. Medical records showing anxiety and depression caused by marital stress. Witness statements from friends who've seen the warning signs. And after the divorce? After the divorce, I'll be a wealthy woman and you'll be my very grateful boyfriend." She leaned across the table and kissed him. "We just have to be patient a little longer." "I'm tired of being patient," Elliot said. "I'm tired of sneaking around. When this is over, I want everyone to know you're mine." "Soon, baby. Very soon." I finished my beer, left money on the bar, and walked out. Behind me, I heard Marie clearing her throat loudly, our agreed-upon signal that she'd heard everything too. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for them to destroy me. I was going to destroy them first. But I was going to do it right. Legally, thoroughly, and completely. The war was about to begin. Friday morning, I woke up before dawn with a clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Vanessa was still sleeping, her blonde hair spread across the pillow, looking peaceful and innocent. It was almost enough to make me forget what I'd learned about her. Almost. I made coffee quietly and sat at the kitchen table reviewing my plan. Everything had to be perfect. One mistake, One moment of anger or carelessness, and they could turn it all around on me. My phone buzzed. A text from Pete Morrison, my lawyer. "Got your package? We need to talk. ASAP." I'd sent Pete everything the night before. Tony's photos, the recordings, the financial evidence, copies of Vanessa's plan. Everything I needed to protect myself and destroy them. Vanessa came downstairs an hour later, already dressed for work, checking her phone constantly. "Morning, beautiful," I said, pouring her coffee. "Sleep well?" "Like a baby." She kissed my cheek, the same casual affection she'd been giving me for months. Except now I knew it was all performance. "I might be late tonight. Big case at the office." "No problem. I'll probably work late too. Got a big commercial property to appraise across town." She nodded, barely listening, already focused on her phone again. Probably texting Elliot or the lawyer or the woman who was helping her fabricate evidence against me. After she left, I drove straight to Pete's office. Pete Morrison was a good lawyer and a better friend. He'd handled my house purchase, written my will, and given me legal advice on various real estate matters over the years. He was also the kind of man who didn't shock easily. But when I walked into his office that morning, he looked shocked. "Colin, sit down. We need to talk about what you sent me." "It's all true, Pete. Every word, every photo, every recording." "I believe you. That's not the problem." Pete leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. "The problem is what you're planning to do about it." "I'm planning to stop them." "How?" I laid out my plan. Pete listened without interrupting, his expression growing more concerned with each detail. "Colin, I understand you're angry. Hell, I'm angry just listening to this. But you need to be very careful here. Some of what you're talking about could cross legal lines." "Everything I'm planning is completely legal." "Legal, yes. But is it smart? Is it worth the risk?" I looked at my oldest friend, this man who'd known me since college, who'd been best man at my wedding, who'd celebrated every success and helped me through every failure. "Pete, they're not just planning to divorce me, they're planning to destroy me. False accusations of abuse, fabricated evidence, witnesses who will lie under oath. Even if I prove it's all fake, the damage will be done. In a town this size, that kind of reputation follows you forever." Pete nodded slowly. "So, what do you need from me?" "Legal protection. I want everything I'm about to do documented and witnessed. I want it all above board so that when this goes public, nobody can say I did anything wrong." "And what exactly are you planning to do?" I told him. When I finished, Pete was quiet for a long moment. "It's brilliant," he finally said. "Completely ruthless, but brilliant. And yes, it's all legal. Barely, but legal. Will you help me?" "Colin, I've been practicing law for 20 years. I've seen good people get destroyed by predators like your wife and her friends. Hell yes, I'll help you." We spent the next 2 hours going over every detail, making sure every step was legally sound. Pete made phone calls, prepared documents, set up safeguards. By the time I left his office, everything was in place. That afternoon, I started making my moves. First stop, the bank. I transferred all of our joint assets into an account that only I could access. Completely legal since they were joint accounts and I had every right to manage our money. I left exactly enough in the original accounts to cover automatic payments and basic expenses. Vanessa wouldn't be able to access any significant money, but she also wouldn't be able to claim I'd left her destitute. Second stop, the insurance company. I updated all of our policies, removing Vanessa as beneficiary and replacing her with my sister. Again, completely legal since I was the policyholder. Third stop, the county clerk's office. I filed a legal separation agreement that Pete had prepared, citing irreconcilable differences. The moment it was filed, Vanessa would have no legal claim to any assets I acquired after that date. Fourth stop, Tony Ricci's office. I hired him for phase 2 of my plan. "I need you to document everything they do over the next week," I told him. "Every meeting, Every phone call, every lie they tell. I want a complete record of their conspiracy. What are you planning, Mr. Baxter? I'm planning to give them exactly what they deserve. That evening, I was home before Vanessa, cooking dinner and setting the table like nothing had changed. When she walked in, I greeted her with a smile and a kiss. How was your day, sweetheart? Oh, same old stuff. She was distracted, checking her phone again. How was yours? Productive. Very productive. Over dinner, I told her about my day, an edited version that made it sound like I'd spent the time appraising properties and thinking about our future. She nodded and smiled in all the right places, but I could tell her mind was elsewhere. Everything okay? I asked. You seem distracted. Just tired. It's been a long week. Well, the weekend's almost here. Maybe we can do something fun. Take a drive, have lunch somewhere nice, talk about our plans. That sounds wonderful, she said, but her phone buzzed and she immediately checked it. Her face lit up as she read the message. Actually, she said, Shayla just invited me to go shopping tomorrow. Girl time, We haven't had a chance to really talk about things. Of course, you two have fun. But I knew she wasn't going shopping with Shayla. The message had been from Elliot. I'd seen his name on her screen. They were probably planning their next move, figuring out how to accelerate their timeline. They had no idea that I was already 10 steps ahead of them. After dinner, while Vanessa was upstairs taking a bath, I made my final preparations. I sent copies of everything to Pete, to Tony, and to a safety deposit box in a bank 3 towns over. I updated my will, removing Vanessa completely. I prepared a detailed statement explaining everything that had happened, with dates, times, and evidence to support every claim. Then I sat back and waited for them to make their move. I didn't have to wait long. Saturday morning, Vanessa left the house at 10 a.m., dressed to impress and carrying an overnight bag. Shayla and I might make it a whole day thing, she explained. Shopping, lunch, maybe a movie. I might even stay over at her place if we get too tired to drive home. Have fun, I said, kissing her goodbye. I love you. Love you too, she replied, and I had to admire her commitment to the role. She almost sounded sincere. 30 minutes after she left, I was in my truck, following at a distance. She drove straight to Elliot's house, just as I'd expected. I parked where I could see the house and called Tony. They're together, I said. Start documenting. Already on it. I've got cameras positioned and I'm recording everything. For the next 6 hours, I watched my wife and her lover plan my destruction. Tony's cameras captured them going over documents, making phone calls, laughing about how easy it was going to be. At one point, Elliot came out to get something from his car, and I could see him clearly through my binoculars. He looked smug, satisfied, like a man who thought he'd already won. At 4 p.m., a silver Mercedes pulled into Elliot's driveway. Richard Steinberg, the divorce lawyer from Portland. The 3 of them disappeared into the house for 2 hours. When Steinberg left, he was carrying a briefcase full of documents, the fabricated evidence they were planning to use against me. At 8 p.m., another car arrived. A red Honda driven by a woman in her 40s with short dark hair. Jennifer Walsh, the woman who specialized in creating false documentation for divorce cases. By the time Walsh left at 10 p.m., they'd finalized their plan. I could see it in their body language, their expressions. They thought they were ready to destroy me. They had no idea what was coming. Sunday morning, Vanessa came home looking tired but satisfied. How was your girls' weekend? I asked. Wonderful. Shayla and I had such a good time. We talked about everything, the future, our dreams, what we want out of life. She smiled at me, and for a moment I almost believed her. I'm so lucky to have such good friends, and such a wonderful husband. I'm the lucky one, I said. What would you like to do today? Actually, I was thinking we should have a serious talk. About us, about our future. There are some things I need to tell you. Here it comes, I thought. Phase 4. Create irreconcilable differences. We sat in the living room, Vanessa curled up next to me on the couch like a loving wife, about to share her deepest thoughts. Colin, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About our marriage, about what I want, about whether we're really compatible long term. What do you mean? I mean, I love you, but sometimes I feel like you don't really see me. Like you don't understand who I am or what I need. I frowned, playing my part. I don't understand. I thought we were happy. We are happy sometimes, but Colin, you can be very controlling, very demanding. Sometimes I feel like I can't breathe, like I can't be myself around you. Controlling? Vanessa, I've never tried to control you. I want you to be happy, to be yourself. See? Right there. You're dismissing my feelings, telling me I'm wrong about my own experience. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It was masterful, really. She was taking normal relationship conversations and twisting them into evidence of emotional abuse. Every response I gave could be interpreted as controlling or dismissive. Every attempt to defend myself could be seen as gaslighting. If I hadn't known it was all fabricated, I might have started to believe I really was a terrible husband. I don't know what to say, I said. I thought we were building something beautiful together. Maybe we were, but, Colin, I need some space. I need time to think about what I really want. Space? I think I should move out for a while. Stay with Shayla. Give us both time to figure out what we want. Vanessa, no. We can work through this. We can go to counseling. You're doing it again, she said, her voice rising. You're not listening to me. You're trying to control the situation, trying to tell me what we should do instead of respecting what I need. She was good. Really good. If someone had been recording this conversation, it would sound exactly like a controlling husband refusing to give his wife the space she needed. But I was recording this conversation. And I had context they didn't know about. You're right, I said, backing down. I'm sorry. If you need space, then that's what you should have. I just love you so much. The thought of you leaving. It's not leaving, Colin. It's just taking a break, figuring things out. Okay, if that's what you need. She smiled and kissed my cheek. Thank you for understanding. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. Reasonable. Right. That evening, Vanessa packed a bag and left for Shayla's house. Or so she said. I knew she was really going to Elliot's. As soon as she was gone, I made a phone call. Pete, it's time. They just played their hand. Are you sure you want to do this, Colin? Once we start, there's no going back. I'm sure. Let's end this. Okay, I'll make the calls. Everything will be ready by tomorrow morning. I spent that night in my house alone, surrounded by the life I'd built, the future I'd planned, the dreams that had been stolen from me. But I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready for war. Monday morning at 9 a.m., Vanessa received a phone call that changed everything. I wasn't there to see her face when she answered, but Tony was. He'd positioned himself outside Elliot's house with a telephoto lens and a listening device. According to his report, she went white as a sheet. The call was from Richard Steinberg, the divorce lawyer from Portland. He was calling to inform her that he could no longer represent her in any legal matter, effective immediately. What do you mean you can't represent me? Vanessa had demanded. I mean that certain information has come to light that makes it impossible for me to continue our professional relationship. I'm returning your retainer immediately. What information? What are you talking about? Ms. Pierce, I strongly advise you to seek new legal counsel immediately, and I suggest you be very careful about your next steps. The line went silent. 20 minutes later, Jennifer Walsh called with a similar message. She was ceasing all operations immediately and would be returning any materials related to Vanessa's case. By 10 a.m., Vanessa was in full panic mode. She called Shayla, she called Elliot, she tried calling Steinberg back. Nobody had answers. What they didn't know was that Pete Morrison had spent Sunday evening making some very interesting phone calls. The call to Richard Steinberg had been brief and professional. Pete had simply informed him that his potential client was the subject of an ongoing criminal investigation for conspiracy to commit fraud, perjury, and filing false police reports. He'd also mentioned that anyone who assisted in such a conspiracy could face serious criminal charges themselves. The call to Jennifer Walsh had been even more direct. Pete had explained that her documentation services were being investigated by the State Attorney General's office for fraud, and that any current clients should consider themselves at risk. Neither call was a threat. Both calls were simply professional courtesy, one lawyer informing other legal professionals about potential criminal exposure. Completely ethical and completely devastating. But the real masterpiece was the call Pete made to the Maine State Bar Association. It turned out that Richard Steinberg had a history of ethical violations. Nothing major, just a pattern of cutting corners and pushing boundaries. The kind of thing that gets noted in your file but doesn't necessarily end your career. Unless, of course, someone files a formal complaint alleging that you're participating in a conspiracy to defraud an innocent party using fabricated evidence and false testimony. Pete's complaint was detailed, well documented, and supported by audio recordings, photographs, and financial records. It painted a picture of a lawyer who had completely abandoned his ethical obligations in pursuit of a big payday. The Bar Association takes such complaints very seriously. Steinberg's law license was suspended pending investigation within 24 hours. As for Jennifer Walsh, her problems were just beginning. Pete had forwarded all of our evidence about her documentation services to the State Attorney General's office, the IRS, and the FBI. Creating false medical records and witness statements wasn't just unethical, it was multiple federal crimes, but I wasn't done yet. At 11 a.m. I walked into the offices of Brennan, Walsh & Associates, where Vanessa worked as a legal secretary. I'd called ahead and arranged a meeting with Tom Brennan, the senior partner. "Colin," Tom said, shaking my hand. "Good to see you. What can I do for you?" Tom and I had worked together on several real estate deals over the years. He was a good lawyer and a decent man who ran an ethical practice. "Tom, I need to show you something about one of your employees." I laid out everything. The plan, the evidence, the conspiracy. Tom's expression grew darker with each revelation. "Jesus Christ," he said when I finished. "She was planning to use fabricated evidence in a divorce proceeding?" "That's exactly what she was planning, and she was going to claim she learned how to do it from working at your firm." Tom's face went red. "Like hell she was. Colin, I appreciate you bringing this to me. This kind of thing could destroy our reputation." "I figured you'd want to know." "Damn right I want to know. Vanessa Pierce is fired, effective immediately. And Colin, if you need any legal assistance with this situation, it's on the house." By noon, Vanessa had lost her lawyer, her co-conspirator, and her job. But I still wasn't finished. At 1 p.m. I walked into First National Bank, where Elliot Branson worked as a mortgage broker. I asked to speak with the branch manager, Susan Martinez. "Mr. Baxter, what can I do for you?" "Susan, I have some concerns about one of your mortgage brokers that I think you need to know about." I showed her the evidence of Elliot's involvement in the conspiracy, including the payments he'd been making to Vanessa and his participation in planning fraudulent divorce proceedings. "This is very serious," Susan said. "A mortgage broker involved in fraud schemes reflects badly on the entire institution." "I thought you should be aware of the situation." "I appreciate that. We'll be conducting an immediate investigation." Elliot was suspended within the hour. But the real coup de grace came at 3 p.m. I'd spent weeks preparing for this moment, gathering evidence, building my case, making sure every detail was perfect. Now it was time to present it all to the people who mattered most. I walked into the Timberline, where Marie had arranged for a special gathering. Word had gotten out that something big was happening, and the bar was packed with half the town. Vanessa's co-workers, Elliot's clients, people from the real estate community, local business owners, everyone who mattered in our small community. Vanessa was there too, looking desperate and panicked. She'd been trying all day to figure out what was happening, why her carefully laid plans were falling apart. When she saw me walk in, her face went white. "Ladies and gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying across the crowded bar. "Thank you all for coming. I have a story to tell you." And I told them everything. I played the recording of Vanessa's original plan. I showed them the photos of her affair with Elliot. I read excerpts from her conversations about how pathetic and easy to manipulate I was. I explained the conspiracy to create false evidence and destroy my reputation. The room was silent except for my voice and the occasional gasp of shock or disgust. When I finished, I looked directly at Vanessa. "You thought I was too nice to fight dirty," I said. "You thought I was too naive to see what you were really doing. You thought you could take everything I'd worked for and skip off into the sunset with your boyfriend." Vanessa tried to speak, but no words came out. "You were wrong about me," I continued. "But you were right about one thing. I am too nice to destroy you completely. So here's what's going to happen." I pulled out a legal document and set it on the bar. "This is a divorce agreement. No fault, no alimony, no property settlement. You get nothing except what you brought into the marriage. You have 24 hours to sign it." "And if I don't," she finally managed to say, "if you don't, I file criminal charges for conspiracy to commit fraud, and I turn all of this evidence over to the district attorney. Your choice." Vanessa looked around the room at the faces staring back at her. Some showed disgust, some showed pity, but none showed support. Her reputation in this town was finished. She signed the papers. As she walked out of the timberline, followed by a humiliated Elliot, the bar erupted in conversation. People were shaking their heads, expressing their shock, talking about how they'd never suspected. Marie poured me a beer and slid it across the bar. "Well," she said, "that was the best entertainment this place has seen in years." I took a sip of my beer and looked around at my community, people who now knew the truth, who understood what had really happened, who would make sure the story spread to everyone who mattered. Vanessa Pierce had wanted to destroy my life and take everything I'd worked for. Instead, she'd lost everything: her job, her reputation, her future, and her co-conspirators. Justice, it turned out, tasted a lot like victory.